Morning. I'd like to call the Kankakee County Board meeting for August 10th to order. Today's invocation is from Board Member Larry Kirkstra.
The Supreme Ruler of the universe, we reverently invoke thy blessings at this time. Thou show us the path. Show us the path to righteousness and virtue by the belief in you and your Son, who will teach us to ever endeavor to proclaim for the least of these thy virtue. Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Get a roll call, please.
Mr. Hess. Present. Mr. Tholen. Mrs. Polk.
Present.
Mr. Snipes.
Present.
Mr. Seroy.
Present.
Mr. Lear.
Present.
Mrs. Weber.
Present.
Mrs. Peters.
Present.
Mr. Payton.
Present.
Mrs. Parker.
Present.
Mr. Kinzinger. Mr. Fairfield.
Present.
Mr. Carrico.
Present.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Present.
Mr. Swanson. Mr. Featherling. Mr. Dunhill.
Present.
Mr. Miller.
Present.
Mr. Long.
Present.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Present.
Mr. Hunter. Ms. Bryan.
Present.
Mr. Collins.
Present.
Ms. Hudson.
Present.
Mr. Smith.
Present.
Mr. Alexander Hildebrand.
Present.
Mr. Wheeler.
Present.
We have a quorum.
We have a quorum. We have a couple of public comments today. Mr. John Howard from Hopkins Park.
Good morning. Again, my name is John Howard. I run a business on Hopkins Park, Kankakee County Youth Intervention Agency. And I want to just say a couple of words about the COVID funding. I think my suggestion is that the board should maybe send these businesses something with the criteria for applying, if they need to have the articles of incorporation, anything that they might need for that, you know. And also, I think that they need to get an approval letter once the board gets a chance to review it, to see if they're approved or if they're not approved, if they're approved or denied. It's very difficult to, if you got a large estimate that you want to get submitted in to a general contractor to come out in Hopkins Park, knowing that they've not approved yet. You know, for example, if we wanted to get a parking lot done and it's $20,000 or $30,000, they know that. No business out there, no individual has that kind of money. So it's a waste of their time to come out to give you an estimate. So if they could kind of get together and give us a letter saying you approve, you're not approved, once they get a chance to review the proposals that were submitted in as requested in the journal a few months ago. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dennis Clody from Bourbonnais.
Good morning. My name is Dennis Clody. I'm working with a group of organizational leaders and elected officials in Pembroke Township and Hopkins Park. The purpose of my working with them is to bring a group of a dozen or more people together who are in leadership positions, who know the needs of Pembroke Township and Hopkins Park. We're meeting as a group out there. We had a meeting last week. As a result of that meeting, I already have 3 submissions from people with ideas for things that they think they would like to have considered by this board and the subcommittees with the KCR3 funding. Also, we're meeting again tonight. We're hoping to have a few more people there. Now, the intent is to put together one coordinated proposal that I will write up and submit to Mr. Wheeler. It will be a very general list of items that these people that are meeting out there have suggested. After the full subcommittee group and the board looks at that list, they will make a decision. We hope you will make a decision to say, these are the things that we are thinking should be funded for Pembroke Township and Hopkins Park. Once we know what you are inclined to fund, then I will put together a very detailed description with everything you need to know about what's involved with that project. For example, if somebody says we need to have a new floor put in a building, that it would say, okay, we have to tear out the old floor. We have to buy materials. And with that, then there would be quotes from places that would provide the materials for a new floor. We would have then quotations from contractors that would be able to install that flooring, and a cost estimate based on that contractor's paperwork that they would give us. We would then turn in that detailed proposal. So we propose to send you 2 different documents, a very brief, simple list, and then a complete detailed proposal with everything involved with each item that you think you would like to try and fund, with who's involved, the costs, the timeline, how long that project was going to be viable. For example, again, if we're going to put in a floor, hopefully the floor would last 10 years. So we would like to be able to say things like that, because we know you're looking at long-term projects. So that's something that we're working on. We got this group of people out there who are talented individuals who want to get involved. We want to help create jobs for people out there, obviously. Not everything can be done by citizens of Pembroke Township and Hopkins Park. There will have to be some other folks involved from the area here. But we hope to have enough people out there who have the expertise to do the kinds of projects that you are willing to fund through this grant money. So that's what we're trying to do. We hope within the next 30 days to be able to get you both of those proposals. We're having a meeting this evening. We hope to get some more ideas. So like I said, we've already got 3 proposals of things that people have prioritized. We'll say these are the things we think are most important. And we'll get that all pulled together, turned into Mr. Wheeler, who will then share it with the appropriate subcommittee. We will have it all divided by the subcommittee listing that is on the sheet that we got a couple of weeks ago from Mr. Wheeler. So there will be someone from that area, township and village, that would work with the subcommittees, the members that are listed on this sheet, and any others that the county board wants to have involved. So that's what's going on out there. We're hoping that you will want to cooperate so that you don't end up getting 1 proposal here, 2 more in a month, 2 more 3 months later, just a hodgepodge of things. We want 1 general coordinated list of things that need to be done so that you can consider everything at once. And we can get all of the accounting work done through the county board. To follow up on what Mr. Howard said, you know, we would be looking at getting approval letters from the county board saying, we've approved for this project X number of dollars, that we can show a contractor, because some contractors are going to say, we're not going out there to do that because we don't think you have any money. So they would have to see something in writing. So that's where we're coming from. We hope you'll be willing to work with Pembroke and the village to get several new things done out there that have been high needs for a long time, and that it'll all be an organized effort, that every nickel every penny will be accounted for. The paperwork will all be completed as is required by federal and state law and the county board's law policies. So I thank you very much for your time and hope that we'll be able to work with the various subcommittees in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, vacancy appointments, I have none today. We have a proclamation. If we could get that proclamation read into the record, please, Mr. Hendrickson.
Proclamation of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, in recognition of John L. Farber for outstanding achievement and dedication as an Illinois Conservation Officer. Whereas Conservation Police Officer John L. Farber went above and beyond the call of duty during an investigation of a double fatal boating accident on the Kankakee River. And whereas Officer Farber with Officer Elliott investigated and worked 12 straight days coordinating the recovery attempt and staying in contact with the victim's family. And whereas CPO Farber and Elliott represented the Department of Natural Resources in a professional and dedicated manner. Showing great empathy and compassion, they comforted the family and attending the funeral services, giving closure to a horrific and unfortunate accident. And whereas CPO Farber's dedication to wildlife enforcement and protection of the state's natural resources embodies the highest standards of an Illinois conservation police officer. And whereas CPO Farber's continued efforts are reflected by his nomination as the 2020 Northeastern Zone Shikar Safari Wildlife Officer of the Year. And whereas CPO Farber was awarded the award and certificate of merit by the Illinois Conservation Police Department. And whereas CPO Farber was awarded the 2020 Officer of the Year Award for Outstanding Achievement and Dedication by the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, Office of Law Enforcement. And whereas the Kankakee County Board congratulates and celebrates the tremendous achievements and dedication of both Officer Farber and Officer Elliott. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Kankakee County Board salutes the above-named entities and all others that contributed to the resolution of this event. And be it furthermore proclaimed that the Kankakee County Board reaffirms our support and appreciation of first responders all over the nation and congratulates Officer John L. Farber on his achievements.
Mr. Stewart, did you have any comments before you award that? Put you on the spot.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to ask Mr. Farber to come forward. He is a tremendous asset to this county, and he also lives in the town of St. Anne, which he's involved in other things. He's a village board member. He's a school board member. He's a great dad and a wonderful husband, and not a bad golfer, I must say.
Getting there.
So, for those of you who know him, he's Louis. Louis, it's my honor, privilege to award you this proclamation, sir. Thank you.
Appreciate it. I'd like to thank my representative, Todd Seroy, the entire county board for having me here today. This is a very, very humbling experience, and it's great to be recognized by everybody here. Our department's very fortunate to have great working relationships with a lot of county departments. The Sheriff's Department is number one. Sheriff Downey, Chief Gessner, they're always there at a moment's notice to assist us because we're spread pretty thin. Anything we need, they're there, and teamwork is the key to this job. Coroner Gessner, same thing. His office will work hand in hand with them. It's been a great experience. And then Mr. Rowe's office, especially ASA Val Gunderson, she does a great job in prosecuting the conservation cases. So she's a very important piece to generating success in this job. So again, thank you. This is great to be recognized by our county board. If anybody ever needs anything, don't hesitate to reach out. We can do whatever we can to help you. So don't hesitate. Thank you.
No, thank you for your service, dedication, and especially when times are tough and you're in the middle of a situation that whether there's a known not a good outcome, it's still to handle yourself in that same professionalism is appreciated. So we're moving on. No other certificates of appreciation today. The minutes of the last meeting, July 13th, 2021. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Ms. Polk? Yes.
I have a motion to approve. Is there a second? Do a second over here. Sorry, I just wanted to get you in to make sure you knew we were looking for you to make a motion today, Ms. Polk. You seem like you're left out of
thank
that
you.
sometimes, so I'm sorry about that. All righty, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Under Claims Committee reports.
Mr. Chairman and members of the County Board, your Committee on County Claims would beg leave to report they have examined the following claims presented and recommend payment. The clerk is hereby authorized and directed to issue orders to the several claimants. Total claims of $6,775,784.06.
Is there a motion to approve? Ms. Parker, second, Mr. Long. That's a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Ms. Bryan.
Aye.
Mr. Collins.
Aye.
Ms. Hudson.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Alexander.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. I want to thank Kelly for the save. We never voted on the proclamation, so we need that back. No, I'm just kidding. Is there a motion to approve the proclamation out there? Let's go with Mr. Hess and Mr. Lear with a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Thank you. You can keep it. Thanks. Thanks. Department reports, if we can get those read in the record, please.
County Collector's Monthly Report for June 2021. Total cash and bank and investments, $71,789,772.02. County Treasurer's Monthly Report for June 2021. Total cash and investments, $71,789,772.02. Coroner's Monthly Report for June. Total calls, 121. Coroner's cases, 24. Autopsies, 13. Toxicology, 13. 2 donations, 1 indigent, 2 fetal, 50 hospice, 41 referrals, 79 cremations, 5 x-rays, 2 outside autopsies, 12 pending. Coroner's income monthly summary report for June 2021, total of $5,299. Circuit clerk cash book for June 2021, total dispersed $373,712.79. Recorder's monthly report for June 2021, disbursement fees paid to the county treasurer, $179,206.08. County clerk's monthly report for June, total of $31,536.45. Animal control monthly report, total funds submitted to the treasurer, $35,038. In the IPTIP building fund, $5.08. And total animals handled, 142. Monthly building division report for June, total permits, 107. Total fees of $45,906. The monthly resolution list for August 2021, total to the county of $4,280.72.
Is there a motion to approve on the department reports? Mr. Hunter, second. Go with Mr. Dunhill. Just trying to spread it around. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries. Wanted to note something on the consent agenda. If you go down to 284, it's the agreement to approve decommissioning plan. Dell advised me that the 152 amount is incorrect. It's actually the $220,251.01. It's because you have to include the scrap value because we don't know what it's going to be when it's time to scrap. So there was just, they took the wrong column from the sheet. It's actually in your packet with that 220 number, but we have to include the scrap value because the market could be different then and it's less. So it almost acts as a not to exceed.
Repeat that number again.
Yes, $220,251.01. And that's basically the number, that's the 152 number plus the scrap value. That's all in your packet. So beyond that, it's I will call it a Scrivener's error. They just chose the wrong column when we were putting this together. So is there any, and that was out of the planning department. It was not the state's attorney who made that error. Just want to make sure because I didn't, they're sitting back there getting ready to be mad at me. And no, they didn't make the mistake. This time. No, I'm just kidding. So is there a motion on the consent agenda? Is there anything that needs to be removed first?
I'd like a little discussion on 283.
283 remote meetings. Okay, got it. That's removed separately. Any other things to be removed and considered separately? One more time. For all the remaining items, Mr. Hess? Mr. Hess had a motion to combine and approve the consent agenda. Mr. Eckhoff with a second. If we could get those read in the record, please.
The appointment of Matthew M. Olszewski to the Kankakee Regional Land Bank. The reappointment of Jeffrey Long to the Kankakee County Board of Health. The reappointment of Dr. Olatunji Akintillo to the Kankakee County Board of Health. The reappointment of Dr. Cyrita Jones to the Kankakee County Board of Health. Agreement to approve decommissioning plan and bond in the amount of $220,251.01 for the Kankakee 2 solar farm project. Authority for the county board chairman to sign an intergovernmental agreement between Kankakee County and the Village of Aroma Park for historic preservation program. Resolution authorizing the county board chairman to sign a road use agreement with Recon Corporation for a sun-powered energy generation station in County Highway 30 in Rockville Township.
All righty. If there's, we need a roll call vote on these, please.
Mr. Hess. Mrs. Polk.
Yes. Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Ms. Bryan.
Aye.
Mr. Collins.
Aye.
Ms. Hudson.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Alexander.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Now moving on to 283, if we can just get the title in the record and then we'll take the question.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois regarding modification of Article 2, Division 2, Rules of the Kankakee County Code, remote attendance at meetings.
Is there a motion on this one to start with? Mr. Fairfield, a second to approve? Motion to approve, is that what it was? Just want to make sure. Mr. Fairfield, was it a motion to approve? Yes. Okay, I just want to make sure. Motion, second, okay. Then your question, please. Here, let me turn you on.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
In the third whereas, it talks about allow remote attendance for mid to long-range illness. Well, I don't think it would need to be in the resolution. I think maybe a legislative record of what we would have in mind in terms of mid to long-range illness would be. And my thought, at least, it should probably be something in the order of an anticipation that the mid to long-range illness should be something like 30 to 45 days. An illness of a week would not necessarily fall under this category.
And your intent is just to kind of state it and get it on the record that that's the intent, because we did that previously, but it didn't make it in.
Yeah,
So you're thinking
I think
more
I would,
of a
that's my intent.
general
I just wanted to-
exception or something on the record to say your rehab is more than 2 weeks for your,
Yes.
shoulder surgery or
That's my-
whatever. So you're saying like that, what do you thinking that number might?
I was thinking 30 to 45 days at least.
All right, is there anybody else who has any thoughts on that?
No. Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
If we could have John to comment on that. Because I know we discussed this before.
Well, the resolution is what it is. If you want to comment on it and try, basically it's like doing interlineation on it. You'll have to have a separate vote. If you want to change it to that, then that would be appropriate. But unless you want to make change it and make it a separate vote, your comment is fine and that's well taken, but that it doesn't have any binding effect.
Is that acceptable? That we're just not looking for you know, I have a cold, or, you know, it's because we just miss meetings when we have colds, or, you know, but if you're out of town on you know, official business, or those other reasons are stipulated in there, we're trying to be as open as possible with this as we can, you know, so family emergencies, that kind of stuff. So, alrighty, Mr. Snipes.
There are just some reservations in when we're making assessments as to time, because when COVID hit, though you may have had a cold, it was contagious, and if something is contagious, then I would say that it would, the safeguard of the individual who says, I want to safeguard the county board or anybody else from any type of contagious illness, though it may be short term, needs to be addressed and to basically be looked at, but not at any given point in time just ostracized because that person stated that I had what we deem to be a cold. So there's some variables that are in there that we need to basically look at, and we need to leave that interpretation open so that we're not just strictly following a guideline that's set by the board. If that's what we're going to do, then I'll vote no. But if we're going to use common sense and our rationale, then I'll vote yes. That's my take. That's my take on this resolution that you have before the county board.
Any other thoughts on this one? Okay, it can be a voice vote if we're ready for that. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Is there any dissenting votes? Okay, unanimous. Moving on. The consent is done. Give me a moment here to flip the page.
Make sure you guys take a look on the back of this.
Let's see here. Under PZA, if we can get that read in the record, and then Dell's gonna be here to answer any questions. Do we have something to put up on the screen?
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, regarding ZBA case 21-03, rezoning from I-2 General Industrial District to R2 High Density Residential District, special use permit number 6, multifamily dwelling, and 5 variances, lot size minimum, density maximum, floor area ratio, front setback, and building height in section 26 of Manteno Township.
Alrighty, first of all, is there a motion to approve on this one to start with? It came out of committee, approved. Let's go with Mr. Payton, a second. Let's Mr. Fairfield, a second. All right, Dell, do you have comments or descriptions here?
Give you a little background. This is
Sorry, just go ahead.
This is a request from Midland State Bank, which is the owner of the property, circled in red on the map up there, and the potential buyer, Duncan Homes Incorporated, which would like to convert the old administration building in on the Diverse Tech campus to approximately 21 one-bedroom apartments. The facility would have a laundry facility. It would have a exercise fitness room as part of it. In order to accomplish this, the Diverse Tech campus is currently zoned I-2 General Industrial, and the multifamily is not permitted in that area. So they are asking for rezoning to the R2 High Density Residential. This portion of the Diverse Tech campus is the residential area out there. As you can see on the aerial photo, there are residential homes in just about every direction. The special use permit is for a multifamily dwelling within the R2 district, and the variances are mainly due to the fact that this is an existing building on an existing lot. They just don't meet our ordinance to the letter of the ordinance. Zoning Board of Appeals recommended the approval of all of these actions 6-0. And PZA, Planning and Zoning Committee, concurred with them. They did put a condition on the approval that the parking lot is the blue square just south of the red square for the parking on the facility, and that they have a condition that the developer will put in a crosswalk at their expense between the parking and the building. I would be open for any questions.
I had one before we wanted to go. I remember at one point in the testimony, or was in the discussion, we're talking about the PUD that was put together for all those other homes out in that area.
Yes.
And there was a limitation of why this property wasn't included in it.
Well, this property is included in the PUD. All of Diversitech campus is in the PUD. But part of being a PUD, let's back up a second and explain what a PUD is. That's a planned unit development. It allows for uses and variances that to the ordinance that wouldn't normally necessarily be allowed. Multifamily, even single-family residential, is not allowed in the I-2 district. But it's more of a mixed-use development, and it's predetermined the locations and what would be allowed there. And the county board approved that back in, I believe, 1984. But part of that is that uses that are not allowed in the I-2 district are limited to no more than 30% of the entire land mass. So if you have 90 acres or 100 acres, 30 of them can be uses that aren't I-2. Unfortunately, last we had checked, and before we realized that, we were already above that number. So any new developments out there would be subject to rezoning to make them
That's why
compliant.
it's here.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Just want to make sure that, because that actually had a bearing on my thought process too, and also the fact that, you know, this is an I-2 in the area, and that it was the highest and best use, because what else is going to go there? Office space you can't give away these days. So that was part of in the testimony as well. So questions? We can move on for Dell. Mr. Hunter, sorry.
Very much. Dale, I'm familiar with this building, worked out of this facility. Fond memories of working out here, and maybe the ghosts of Phil Novak and myself are still there. So could you repeat, you know, for my information, how many units you're going to be developing with this administration building?
They originally intended on 24 to 28. At the last hearing, I believe they brought it down to 21. And they actually, there are drawings in your packet of what their proposed layout would be.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? All righty, I guess we're ready for voice vote then. The motion is to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Let's see here. Moving on to executive, if we could get that read into the record.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois regarding adoption of the mission statement and policies for the American Rescue Plan funding.
Is there a motion here to start with? To approve? Mr. Hunter, second. Mr. Long? This is basically a summary of the committee work to get our policies approved, so we start moving through with some of the actual approvals of projects, things that are internal and maybe somewhat, quasi-governmental units external. That's what we've been moving on now. I want to say the ones we could use for education, how these meetings need to go and the process needs to be, so we can dive into some of the more, we say meaty proposals that have been put in front of us. If there's any questions, please let me know, but we went through basically all the committees approved versions of this for their subcommittee. So I think we should have agreement, but in case there's anything else, now's your time. So, and we have a motion in a second, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Alrighty, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries, thank you. Next item, we have to.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois regarding authorizing the adjustment of the public defender salary.
Is there a motion on this one? Yes, Ms. Bryan, motion to approve. Second?
Polk.
Ms. Polk for the second. Basically, when the state increases, and everybody knows the deal here, when the state increases the state's attorney's pay, then the public defender has to be paid a certain percentage of that. That's why we up this. Again, most of their salaries are covered by the state, but it's just we're keeping in line with what has to happen. So this is spending money. Without any other questions, we can do a roll call.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes. Mr. Seroy. Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber. Mrs. Peters. Mr. Payton. Mrs. Parker. Mr. Fairfield. Mr. Carrico. Mr. Eckhoff. Mr. Donnell. Mr. Miller. Mr. Long. Mr. Kirkstra. Mr. Hunter. Ms. Bryan. Mr. Collins. Ms. Hudson. Mr. Smith. Mr. Alexander. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Under finance is the next one here. We should read the record.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois regarding a 2-year benefit consultant services agreement with Clemens and Associates.
All righty, is there a motion to approve on this one? I'll go with Mr. Donnell second. Ms. Parker? Is there any questions about the proposal? We went through it in finance. So we're just kind of making sure we're already through the renewal this year. We're not through it, we're just starting the process, but it'll basically be for this year and next year, so we'll be able to handle that. All righty, that'll need to be a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess. Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes. Mr. Seroy. Mr. Lear. Mrs. Weber. Mrs. Peters. Mr. Payton. Mrs. Parker. Mr. Fairfield. Mr. Carrico. Mr. Eckhoff. Mr. Donnell. Mr. Miller. Mr. Long. Mr. Kirkstra. Mr. Hunter. Ms. Bryan. Mr. Collins. Ms. Hudson. Mr. Smith. Mr. Alexander. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. All righty. The next one, oh yeah, we did hear it in finance because we had missed PZA for that month, I believe. We get that one right in the record?
290.
Yes, please.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, authorizing the submittal of the application dated August 10th, 2021 for a public transportation capital assistance grant under the Illinois Department of Transportation's general authority to make such grants.
Is there a motion on this one? Ms. Hudson, Mr. Lear with a second. Is there an explanation necessary? We went through this in finance. This is our yearly, basically operating grant for transportation. Ben's here to answer any questions if you have them. Pretty cut and dried. We'll do a roll call because there'll be a local match, but it's usually in man hours, I believe. Is that how that's worked?
This is the rebuild grant for.
Oh, it's the rebuild grant.
Yeah, so this is no match for us locally, so.
Okay.
This will be new vehicles and the potential for a bus mart.
Okay. But technically, we're spending money at some point, but it's coming from another source. It comes into the county, so
Yeah,
we're gonna
correct.
have to roll call vote that anyway, but it's basically not our local taxpayer money. So, okay. If we're good, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hess. Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes. Mr. Seroy. Mr. Lear. Mrs. Weber. Mrs. Peters. Mr. Payton. Mrs. Parker. Mr. Fairfield. Mr. Carrico. Mr. Eckhoff. Mr. Donnell. Mr. Miller. Mr. Long. Mr. Kirkstra. Mr. Hunter. Ms. Bryan. Mr. Collins. Ms. Hudson. Mr. Smith. Mr. Alexander. Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Under openings,
2 openings on the Kankakee Regional Land Bank Authority Board of Directors, 1 opening on the Raymond Drainage District, 1 opening on the Spring Creek Drainage District, 1 opening on the Canavan Drainage District, 1 opening on the Gar Creek Drainage District, 1 opening on the Little Beaver Special Drainage District, 1 opening on the McGillivray Special Drainage District, 1 opening on the Minnie Creek Drainage District, 1 opening on the Momence Yellowhead Drainage District Number 1, 1 opening on the Essex Township Fire Protection District, 1 opening on the Zoning Board of Appeals, 1 opening on the Kankakee County Public Building Commission, 3 openings on the Mantino Number 9 Drainage District, 6 openings on the Kankakee County Regional Planning Commission, 8 openings on the Animal Welfare Advisory Committee, 1 veterinarian, 2 county board members, and 5 at-large members.
all righty. So as they say, if you know somebody, let me know. Let us know. I will say that I've got the applications on the 2 openings for the land bank. So we have those folks. It'll be in front of the executive this month. So we had a couple of people, 1 in commercial, 1 in residential real estate, to join the finance person that we had. So we're gonna have a really strong land bank board, which includes Gaines Hall, from the city of Kankakee, Barbie Brewer Watson, and Victor Navarro. So they're going to be able, Navarez, excuse me. Thank you, because I used to say Navarro, for straightening me out. So there's a lot of talent there that actually understands the market and is going to do a lot of good things, maybe sooner than later. So we'll see how that works out. Under new business, this is something that came from our ARPA committees. It's opportunity driven. The sheriff's here. In case there's any questions, but if we can get that read in the record, please.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, authorizing the purchase of county vehicles by the Sheriff's Department.
So the general gist of it is we know in our rotation we've got to replace these squads, every certain time period before they get too high the mileage and we don't get anything for them. It's better to feed newer vehicles through the system than not get anything when you're going to replace the new vehicles that become 10 years old with 150,000 miles on them. You don't get anything for that. So we were not going to be able to do this probably in the near future until the ARPA money came along. And with the delay in anybody being able to get a vehicle, we kind of assumed that we were looking at 2 years anyway until this gets caught up. Well, the sheriff had located some vehicles, and the nature of the pricing and all of that, you could better speak to that, Sheriff, but I believe it was that we've got, in a neighboring state, we found lower than Illinois state bid price on these vehicles. Is that accurate? And so, with, and I'm not really sure, did we include the price of the equipment in these, in this particular bid? You'll have to forgive me, because I'm not real sure about that.
No, that price was not included in the cost of the vehicle. That was going to be based on what we traded in or what we sold at auction was going to pay for the equipment that goes in those vehicles.
Okay, because, and we could use ARPA or what we trade them in for, because we're getting substantially more than we used to on the vehicles at auction. So we're going to be able to deal with that. So the authorizing is the purchase so somebody else doesn't grab them. Because that's why it went straight here from the ARPA committees, because we could wait a whole other month and then they're gone, because try to find a vehicle these days. Now the vans and the bus aren't here and they're going to come back at some point. We just, that's a much longer lead time on getting those. So it wasn't technically an emergency and we couldn't skip committee on those. That's why you're just hearing that now. But I think the ARPA committees all agreed that we need to move on those too. We just need to line that up and time it. So I talked around and through this issue, but is there any other questions before we get a motion to approve on this one? All right, motion to approve. Mr. Snipes, second. I'll go with Mr. Long, who used to have to take care of these vehicles at one point, so he is very adamant about staying with the program. And believe me, it was spit and gum and wax at one point. You did pretty good with it, so we don't want to get to that point again. Any other questions or thoughts? Mr. Hunter?
Just got a question. I was looking at my two proteges right here. I think we agreed that these dollars here, the Democrat dollars. Oh, okay, just want to make sure.
I prefer Biden bucks. Yeah.
That's right. And Mr. Lear said yes.
Thank you. So yeah, it's the money's nice, but how you spend it is even nicer. So we're doing it. These are dollars that local taxpayers would have to pay that we're not having local taxpayer utilize, and I hope that's appreciated because it's critical infrastructure and we can do this with the money. We have choices here, and we made a choice that saved our local taxpayers money, and I hope that resonates out there in the community, because we're going to be making a lot more like that down the road. So we have a motion and a second. Are we ready for roll call? All those in roll call, please. Sorry.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes.
Aye.
Mr. Seroy.
Aye.
Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff. Mr. Dunhill. Mr. Miller. Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Ms. Bryan.
Aye.
Mr. Collins.
Aye.
Ms. Hudson.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Alexander.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. And we'll get those going very quickly. The next item, we do not have a bid per se. I'll give you an update. Mr. Payton and I were working on this last week. I found the gentleman who used to do the repairs out there and all the consulting. From years ago, he hadn't been paid for the last job he did 5 years ago. Is why he was not thrilled to go back. But we got him to go back out there, and Mr. Payton worked with him. If we would have just fixed the pumps, it still wouldn't work. Everything's shot. And so I don't know if you want to comment on that, Mr. Payton, on where we're at and what we have to do, the steps going forward.
Mr. Chairman, I want to comment that the health issues as well as the emergency, it still exists as we speak today. However, the problem has been as we observe the pumps, then we find that the panels are not working right. And as you stated, if we put the pumps in right now, we still would not have them working correctly. So it's going to take a minute to get those certified bids, but we will get them because I'm working with the former guy, Bryant, and the community still have that need. So I ask the board to bear with us until we can get the bids.
Thank you, and it's the next steps are we have to basically drain everything out of there, so we have to know what needs to be drained.
Right.
But then, you know, going forward, what's the longer term solution? And we're working on that at the same time. But the emergency exists, but we've got to remove the problem, so to speak, before we can get through the pipes. And there's no drawings even on what the system is rated at. So how do you? We can't find anything to know how to. It's a real problem. So it is. It's just not people dragging their feet or nobody's getting bids. The whole system is shot.
Right.
And it's not just a couple $1,000s. Right. I want to let everybody know it could be extremely expensive, and we just don't know what that is yet. I'll start with Mr. Snipes, and we'll go to Mr. Hunter.
Help me to understand, because on the face of this is saying Hopkins Park, which is an incorporated area, and I know we deal with Pembroke, which is an unincorporated area. How does that intertwine, and how are we able to kind of allocate the funds if it's saying Hopkins Park versus Pembroke, which is unincorporated? We have the authority to do the unincorporated areas. However, is there some type of intergovernmental agreement, partnership, or what is it? How are they coming to us for this particular finding? Or is Pembroke, is this something part of Pembroke?
It's there's, I believe, 3 pumping stations that Hopkins Park has as part of the system, and one that Pembroke Township has.
Exactly.
And the one that's not functioning is Pembroke Township. This was a placeholder on the agenda. It just said Hopkins Park in general. You know, it's not a. There is no special arrangement. Both entities have said that they would like us to be their fiscal agent going forward for grants and these types of things. So we just need to formalize that agreement, you know, as far between both of us. So they are GATA certified via us, if you will. We can do a lot if we help them. But that's just a term. It's Hopkins Park / Pembroke Township.
Okay.
But the problems aren't in the Hopkins Park stations right now. Those are maintained. The ones that aren't and haven't been, and we'll have another problem in 5 years if we don't. And I'm with Mr. Payton, obviously, withstanding. We need a longer term solution.
Right.
But getting it fixed, we just don't know what that's going to cost yet, because now it's everything in the system until we eliminate some things that we know are good. I hope it makes sense that way. And it's tough to get people out there because the real subject matter experts got burned like 5 years ago, and they're still owed money from the last job that they did out there. So it's very tough to get people to help, and I was able to talk someone into going back with Mr. Payton and his integrity, working with that. We're there to help. We just don't know what it is yet, because we could have fixed the pumps and then it still would have not worked, and we'd still have sewage in the ditches. So we have to do it in an engineering fashion.
So do we have an idea what that funding is going to be? It says emergency funding.
No.
So
we were hoping the bid would be here today.
Oh, okay.
And it's not. That's where we got to get to the point. Like, I mean, we're even dealing with some very basic things about access to the site. So it's we're gonna fix it, but we don't know what it is. If it's $750,000, I don't know that we have that kind of money. If it's $75,000, then we have a discussion.
Right.
But really, it's anywhere in the middle there. We just don't know at this point. So I wish I had a better answer. I just keep putting it on the agenda for when we do have an answer. So I hope that makes sense. It's like, not like we don't care, but we could have already spent a bunch of money on doing pumps and then the system still wouldn't work. So moving on.
Will they have to pay that back?
Mr. Hunter, I'm sorry. Ms. Polk, go ahead first. You're on.
Yes, I wanted to know, are we doing it free, or are they going to have to pay us back?
We were looking to use ARPA funds for the township to help them, but we just didn't know what to allocate, because you can't, it is critical infrastructure. It is with an entity that wasn't necessarily a municipality. We didn't completely exclude municipalities. We would just want to see some partnership out of the municipalities. So if in fact it was one in the township and one in Hopkins Park, we left it out saying if the community doesn't have the money to do it on their own, then we could talk about a partnership, which with really the eastern part of the county in mind. But we weren't gonna be funding things in other areas as terms of infrastructure inside of the other municipalities, but there is a definite need in the eastern part of the county, and there's not a tax base to support the infrastructure needs they have. Hence, water projects, hence the natural gas pipeline, hence, but again, if we fix it, it's got to have a long-term solution that we're not back here 5 years from now. Does that make sense? We have to come up with something that is long-term for the residents out there to help the township.
Okay, the people that they owe, will they ever get their money?
This might be the wrong board to ask that question. I think there's an intent. I would say the supervisor may say, yes, we're going to work towards that.
Yeah. I suggest you come to our board meeting.
Yeah, we definitely, and the person knows what they're doing. They are the subject matter expert in this within the region, not just Kankakee County. So I guess, Mr. Hunter.
I just want to, there's a lot of questions that remain, and I really just want to convey my appreciation to the chairman and Sam Payton for their due diligence and the work that they've done in this particular matter. You guys don't know or realize the number of man hours that it's taken that these guys have been working on this, and I've interfaced with them as well too. And without really being redundant, I mean, we don't know at this point in terms of specificities how much it's going to cost, for the work to be done. But the long-term situation that the chairman referenced, there's a concept in terms of an interface with another entity to help in terms of I won't give specificities, but community benefits of another entity who might be able to help ongoing with respect to the maintenance. Because you've heard some comments made about the dire circumstances of raw sewage in the ditches, et cetera. But again, I want to thank you and the chairman and Sam, for your due diligence. In fact, I had a dream about the circumstances out there because I'm familiar with that particular area. And I just would hope that when we do receive the specificities from Brian, that it will be a favorable vote, because our utmost action or positive action is indicated. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, and I'll just skipping ahead, the committee, the next opportunity that we could approve something is the committee of the whole meeting next Monday at 1 p.m. So maybe that we're buying enough time to get to that point to be able to know what it is.
I think so, Mr. Chairman.
I'm really, really pushing, and Mr. Payton is as well. So that being said, we can move on to old business if we could. Number 292, if we can get that read in the record.
Resolution of the County Board of Kankakee County, Illinois, authorizing the County Board Chairman to sign, execute the purchase and sale agreement and all other necessary documents for the sale of the property located at 3583 State Route 4552.
Is there a motion to approve here? Mr. Hunter, second, Mr. Eckhoff. This is our land south of town past Love's Truck Stop. We're finally getting to the end of the due diligence period, and I just need the authority to sign. We got full asking price. We should ask for more. So no motions to amend to a higher price, please. But it'll work out for everybody that we transfer this property. Keep in mind that money goes back into the building fund for animal control. Okay, this was never Bark's money. There was a nasty rumor out there that we were selling land that Bark bought. They never bought it. This was bought with animal control IPTIP building fund money. So that's where it's going. And the profit we made off of this is going back to animal control as well for their next facility, which we already know we have the heart and mind to do. Now we're trying to find the wallet to do. So I just want to make sure that everybody's clear on that process. So we have a motion and a second? Motion? Oh, yeah, we did. Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, it was, I believe it was,
I made the motion.
Colton was the second.
And Colton, yeah.
Yeah, it was Hunter and Colton. Do need to do a roll call on that one just to make sure we're covered.
Mr. Hess.
Aye.
Mrs. Polk.
Aye.
Mr. Snipes. Aye. Mr. Seroy. Aye. Mr. Lear.
Aye.
Mrs. Weber.
Aye.
Mrs. Peters.
Aye.
Mr. Payton.
Aye.
Mrs. Parker.
Aye.
Mr. Fairfield.
Aye.
Mr. Carrico.
Aye.
Mr. Eckhoff.
Aye.
Mr. Donnell.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Long.
Aye.
Mr. Kirkstra.
Aye.
Mr. Hunter.
Aye.
Ms. Bryan.
Aye.
Mr. Collins.
Aye.
Ms. Hudson. Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Alexander.
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler.
Aye. Motion carries. Just a quick comment under, new old business, whatever, the committee of the whole. We're foregoing all of the other subcommittees and having one large committee of the whole meeting on Monday. The email went out to board members, to media, all of that stuff next Monday, to get everybody together to talk about where we're at, all of the policy that we've approved, because now we're starting to see how things are lining up. We're seeing the requests that we're getting from a lot of the non-for-profits that have a lot of different projects. There's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of redundancy. I don't want to say competing over the same clientele. And then the systems, now that we know what we didn't know as far as what we would see, we're starting to see some operational trepidation with how we're going to operate this going forward to grantees because of the documentation trail. And so I'm going to suggest some things after thinking about it for a couple of weeks in that committee that would allow us to not have to meet as frequently, but still have the oversight that the board has over all the projects that we're doing, but also realizing that we have some very serious HR issues within the county to be able to manage 50, 60 grantees and the documentation necessary to supply the U.S. Department of Treasury. There's going to have to be an operational shift because we just could not do that. We don't have the staff and we can't hire for the jobs we have open right now. And who's going to go work for a job that's temporary for 2 years? So we have some issues on how we're going to structure this internally in order to be able to do the good work that we want to do. And without overlap, without competition, with us being able to fill the gaps and things that might be working in some areas and not in others. So we'll get into that a little bit more, a lot of bit more as we need to next Monday. But what I propose, and we're working on a visual, is basically combining what we used to do with how like the SAMHSA grant works right now, the drug court and all of the recidivism things and all of the things that we're doing out of KCRO and the probation department. It's a combination of how we manage that grant, how we receive the grant, how the grants are applied for, and what this board wants to see tackled. That's the key. Is you have set the tone with policy, and you will set the tone on the type of grants that we offer that will hopefully pull in all of the different people that are asking for help. You know, we don't want to fund competition. That's the biggest part. We don't want to compete over clients. I'm seeing overlap. You have the information in your packets. You see it too. You have to, because it's obvious. So they're all good intentioned, but how do we work this so everybody's doing what they need to do and we're filling the gaps that currently exist? Because they're there, because what we're doing now may be working on some levels, but it's really not working overall as far as crime, recidivism, joblessness, lack of workforce training in certain areas, you know, all the mental health, substance abuse, physical health, all those different things that we're talking about. We can still do this and still get accomplished what you want to accomplish and have the measurables behind it, but not under the current structure where we have to manage all of the grantees. I see big problems in that, because ultimately who's responsible if the money is misspent? We are. And so I think we need some help in that area, and I'm going to suggest that on Monday. We still retain control, but we still have experts that are able to manage the grant continuum, much like the feds do with us, and that's what we're going to run through. We become the federal government in a way on the way we handle grants. That's what I'm suggesting. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, but no, the way they release them and require the management, that's what we have to do, because otherwise we're the ones that are on the hook to pay it back. So with that being said, any other new business, old business? Mr. Snipes.
Just need to get just a little bit of insight, because though we are responsible, and I'm sure we're going to allocate and supervise the funding of allocating the funding, but it should be the individuals who receive the funding that would have to have, after you all set this criteria, a set of guidelines by which they need to follow in order to basically utilize the grant. So are we entertaining the notion of a subcommittee or ad hoc committee? Because it looks like this can fall up under executive and finance to a degree, and if there's a subcommittee up under them that kind of want to oversee that process. So I would probably be on tiptoe anticipation to see the organizational structure of how this is going to operate, so that it benefits us but not overwork us.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And we don't mind work, but yeah, exactly. And resources we don't have. Why would we spend resources on staffing when there's people that already do this, so that can write grants, that can get into to see what we want to fund? And I don't want to get in the weeds here, but to your point, it addresses just that. Using existing committees we have and the full board, now that we have an idea what everybody's looking for the most part, there's more coming in. But how do we address all of that and monitor it and require the paperwork reporting every quarter, just like the feds have us? We have to require that of other people. It's better to hold maybe 1 or 2 point groups accountable for that information, and then if they don't supply it, then they pay us back, than us chasing down 50 different grantees, and maybe some capped funds for businesses and other things. So we're going to get into that in not-for-profits, so we're able to budget. It's important for this board to be able to budget the money. You can't at the end of it go, oh wow, we just spent $500,000 more than they gave us. We kind of need to know what we're doing as we're going along as well. Mr. Hunter?
Yeah, just to piggyback on what you said, Mr. Snipes, there are some individuals or organizations who have the infrastructure to address some of the things that the chairman is talking about. And you know, because you guys may recall some time ago, I was asking the administration if indeed we were going to identify personnel needs in order to address this. But you know, what's really helpful if you guys really monitor and take a look at who is asking for some of the funds and their mission, and you really got to take a look to see if they have the credibility with respect to the internal mechanisms to monitor the expenditures. That's important. You just don't give money to entities and they not have the internal monitoring devices within their organization.
And that's where the combination of working under that auspice with the social service type things that we all are wholly unqualified to talk about in a great continuum, you know, the mental health, substance abuse. We may know a little part of it from different work that we do, but we don't know how everything connects together. Hence the meeting we had with workforce and business last ARPA meetings, so everybody kind of know what the lay of the land is here. We don't have the ability to do that as a board. We know what we want to impact and we know what's important to the area. We kind of have an idea what's wrong, but we just don't know how to get from A to B, and then what numbers and measurables show that we're making a dent, because that may be what we want to fund after this, you know. And also these partnerships, if we do these things, there's partnerships with the municipalities where it has the biggest impact. So we're just maybe not footing the bill ourselves, we're reaching out and partnering with municipalities that may have the same issues that we're talking about and trying to tackle. Our money goes further and impacts more people in our better programs. Initially, the idea has been pretty warmly received by leaders in those other communities that I've talked to. So more to come. I hate to be mysterious, but I don't want this to turn into another 2-hour meeting just about this. That's why instead of meetings all day next Monday, we're gonna have the one big meeting, focus on it, determine a path. Jasmine's working on the PowerPoint, and we're gonna kind of roll with what we're doing now, what the problems potentially will be, and most likely will be what we do now with like the SAMHSA grant, because there is a continuum and accountability on that and the transparency required in reporting. But then what I'm proposing is kind of a hybrid between the two to make everything flow. The key is our local non-for-profits and our local citizens and our local businesses are positively impacted. That's the key on this, that we're addressing the problems that we have in Kankakee and not what is on the news channels and what's going on in Chicago, it's what's going on here. How do we move it forward? So, any other thoughts? I mean, we'll get into this big time next Monday, but hopefully it'll be more respectful of your times. We'll use the committees that we have that everybody can still participate in, but it's not 40 meetings every month. Then we're just moving things forward at a glacial pace to some of the public comments. Some of it's gonna be really easy. The internal requests, all of that stuff, but once we start getting into these truly life-changing things that we're talking about, the historic opportunities we have, that's gonna take partners in planning and really help from outside entities who live this every day. So, yes, sir.
Just one other thing, we're pursuing our efforts to kind of go green and kind of eliminate a lot of the paperwork. I know we're eyeballing a couple of things that's still in motion.
Yeah, it is. I believe we're like half to 3/4 of the way removing all of the old apps off of there, maybe closer than to the end of that. So I asked about that last week, and I believe as we're getting towards the end of what we had to do to prepare them to get them in your hands. Okay. Then we may have, like, everybody shows up an hour before the board meeting and we have a training the next time on how to use these things. Most of it's pretty intuitive, but it's not gonna be like, Candy Crush isn't going to be on there. So, it's going to be your county board documents, the email, so you can drag them on your desktop, but it's mostly read it off of the email. I don't even think, we're not going to put like, everybody has a copy of Word and Excel and all of that kind of stuff. It'll open up in the email, but you won't be able to like just start saving documents on it because it's really just for the meetings, and you could go through, obviously search the internet. We'll put the county code on there, as a link, so because that's online, everybody can see that. Maybe Robert's Rules of Order might be helpful. I keep mine close, they're right here. So yeah, so it's just one of those things. We're trying to make it an easy tool, and some people have said I want paper. While I would strongly encourage them to not want paper, I can't solve that, but we can one-off that, and if people want to, we'll put a stack upstairs, and if they want to make copies, they can make copies, so, but we definitely do want to reduce the cost. I was just looking the other day, yesterday, I believe. Color is about 10 to 15 cents a page, and black and white is about 5 cents a page. Start doing the math. That's the cost on this.
Good government costs money, right?
It adds up. And believe me, that's where our central services budget starts to fall apart. And that's why we pushed all the paper and ink to the departments, because some people use more or less depending on their needs or desires. It gets expensive. Why waste money on that if you've got an iPad for free? Any other thoughts? Motion to adjourn? Oh, yes, Mr. Hess, sorry.
Before I make the motion to adjourn, I was just wondering, is Kelly all right with having less meetings? I mean, she enjoys them so much.
She wanted more, actually.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Yes, sir. Mr. Kirkstra, second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed?